Hey everybody, this is Blake here, and welcome to my review of Ted 2. It was really boring. It was like this weird combination of the quintessential lazy sequel that coasts off of gags from the first film and the ambitious yet failed experimental type of comedy that A Million Ways to Die in the West was. Now, I liked the first Ted. I thought it was a good comedy, not a great one. It's one of those films that I laughed really hard when I first saw it in theaters, but once I saw it on the small screen when it came out on DVD, it just lacked that impact. I knew what to expect from the jokes, so they just weren't as funny. Whereas to me, the best comedies are the ones that you could revisit time and time again, and they'll still be just as funny as they were the first time. A recent example of that for me is The Hangover. Although I prefer, my favorite comedies are Arthur the original and Young Frankenstein. But Ted was good. A Million Ways to Die in the West was not very good, but at least Seth MacFarlane tried, and I could forgive that kind of bad when I can see the effort on screen, even if it ultimately led to its ambitions led to that film collapsing under its own weight. But Ted 2, at least it has a new plot. It's not just recycling the storyline from the original film, but and it doesn't rely too much on the gags developed for the first film. Even though there is some of that there, where it's only funny because the first film was funny. And there were moments where I did laugh. I laughed pretty hard. But afterwards, I was thinking, what were the parts that got the best reaction from me? Well, I loved the Liam Neeson cameo. I thought that was hilarious. I loved the way it was written. I loved the way Liam Neeson delivered his lines in a very Taken-ish kind of way. I loved Ted's reaction to, the way Liam Neeson delivered his lines. That was a really good moment. I was expecting a greater payoff, though, because it seemed like it was being set up for him to return later on in the movie, but it just doesn't happen. But still, great moment in itself. I was glad it was in the movie. I liked the Jay Leno cameo. I liked the Tom Brady cameo. Those scenes provided some funny moments with just great reactionary humor. But is that a good thing when the funniest moments are the cameos? When they're stealing the show from the main characters? No. Morgan Freeman has an extended cameo. He's not in the movie as much as you would think based on how much the trailers have been advertising him. But some of the things he says, it's funny just because Morgan Freeman is the one saying them, but he honestly seems kind of awkward and uncomfortable with delivering some of these lines. Like when Ted asks if he ever brings any women into this office, Morgan Freeman says, "Well, what do you think?" And it was supposed to be like a real kind of cool bit, but Morgan Freeman just was like, "This is kind of stupid. I don't feel comfortable saying this." And then it's even worse later on when Morgan Freeman drops the F-bomb in a way that just... If Samuel Jackson was in this role, I think he would have had a lot more fun with it and made it work. And that would have also provided a much funnier payoff to a joke set up early on where they say, Samuel Jackson's in every movie. But Morgan Freeman just, once again, he looks kind of awkward and uncomfortable, even if the line is still kind of funny just because it's Morgan Freeman saying it. But like other times, they're setting up jokes, but then they have very weak payoffs. Like in the very beginning, Patrick Stewart's doing the narration again, just like he did in the first movie. Well, in the first movie, they had some really good content there, where he goes on a tangent on the Apache helicopter, or mentions how the children get together to beat up on the little Jewish kid, and then when Mark Wahlberg tries to get on that, they reject him, and then the little Jewish kid rejects him too. That made me laugh. Well, here they're building up to this wedding that Ted's having with his love interest, Tammy Lynn. And what's the payoff line to all of this? This elaborate joke that they're setting up, just proving that Americans don't give a shit about anything. Well, that's kind of lazy. That's weak. it just feels like Seth MacFarlane wanted a funny part to be there, but couldn't really think of anything, so just gave up and threw that in there. And there are other parts where they spend so much time building up jokes just for them to never really go anywhere. Like, okay, one part that did get me to laugh a little bit was when they lampooned Jurassic Park. I chuckled at that. But what is the payoff to this joke? Just them sitting around getting high, no real impact on the rest of the movie. I was expecting somebody to show up like in a cameo, I was expecting another cameo to appear, because they've landed on somebody's property and they do express concern that somebody might show up, but it never happens. So why? Now, in the first Ted, there were a lot of tangent moments, stuff that they could have easily taken out of the film, and it wouldn't have affected the narrative at all. But they just worked a lot better in that film. Here, whenever it goes into one of those tangents, it just... I keep thinking padding because I'm not laughing. If these jokes were making me laugh a lot more, I wouldn't have cared that they didn't really need to belong in this already bloated narrative. So that's obviously a problem. Amanda Seyfried's character has this running gag surrounding her where she does not understand pop culture. Ted wants to name himself after Clubber Lang, and she's like, who? And you're like, what, you never seen Rocky 3? You don't know that? And she's like, oh, what is Rocky? Oh, is that the boxing movies? And I think the payoff to that gag is her just saying, who's Superman? And then like, oh no, I'm just kidding with you. Was that fucking it? Why did they need this bit with this character? It's not funny in either the setup or the payoff. So why couldn't it have just cut that out entirely because it's stupid and not getting a reaction out of me? And I didn't get a reaction out of the audience I sat with either, so I'm not alone there. And then like other moments, it just seems like there weren't any jokes, where I was just getting bored. And then like I was thinking at first, the film's taking itself way too seriously. For a film that has Mark Wahlberg covered in semen. But then I thought, no, that's not really true either. The first Ted had, some very emotional moments. It just had a much better balance between the drama and the comedy. Here, there's just not enough comedy, or the comedy is so uninspired that it doesn't really register, so you're only really paying attention to the drama. I don't... All the characters are significantly nastier than they were in the first film. Ted, he was kind of a jerk-ass in the first movie, but the first thing that always caught my attention was how much he cared about Mark Wahlberg's character, and that made up for it. Here, his relationship with Mark Wahlberg is no longer the backbone of the story. It's just about him and then Mark Wahlberg's relationship with the new love interest. So he can never fall back on that. And then just some of the digs he takes at other people just feel so mean-spirited. Like, he keeps taking shots at Amanda Seyfried's eyes and how they're so big, and he refers to them as Gollum eyes. Well, that's just mean and cruel. Now, this must just be a thing with Seth MacFarlane, because he had a similar gag with A Million Ways to Die in the West. Now, the difference was, in A Million Ways to Die in the West, she was a bitch, and we did not care that she was getting mocked, because she was only getting mocked because she was a bitch. Here, there's just no reason for it. It just feels like Ted's an asshole for making fun of her, and Seth MacFarlane then looks like an asshole for thinking that this is apparently funny. I mean, Jesus Christ, if Amanda Seyfried, if you're going to poke fun at her appearance, then what is every other woman going to feel? Because, she is exceptionally attractive, even by Hollywood standards, and her eyes do not look that bad. In fact, I think they're rather appealing for her face type, but, I just did not like Ted making fun of her so much on that. And, like, the guy is, I can't think of his name, but he was the guy in the first film who was like this big tough guy, and the joke was that he was gay, but he was kind of downplaying it, and he was with Ryan Reynolds' character. Well, he shows up and he has a new boyfriend, and at the end of the movie, he appears once more, and he's bullying the nerds. And yeah, while they do get their revenge, I'm like, weren't we supposed to be liking this character in the first film, or even earlier in this film? Now I don't really can, and none of these jokes where he's bullying these geeks are making me laugh, so it just makes me dislike that character. Amanda Seyfried's love interest character, the first time we see her, she pulls out a bong and starts getting high, and she says, well, I have headaches. So presumably it's legal what she's doing. She has some sort of marijuana card. But still, I can't take this character seriously now because that's very unprofessional and not to mention rude for you to do this in front of total strangers, not to mention potential clients. But yeah, they're treating it like it's like, oh, that's really cool. I'd be really concerned if my lawyer was doing that right in front of me right after we've just met. But then she loses her case, so seems kind of incompetent. And you're thinking, okay, well, she's going to find her redemption, that she's going to come back and she's going to win it, during the appeal. No, she just goes and recruits Morgan Freeman's character, and then afterwards her only function in the story is being Mark Wahlberg's love interest. Once again, this is shit I would not really think about if I was being distracted by the comedy. If I was laughing, I would not care about all this stuff. I would not care that Mark Wahlberg seems more immature than ever before, even though he spent the entirety of the first movie growing up. That pissed me off too. I never like it when the couples from previous films break up in between movies. I almost hate that as much as I hate the getting back together storylines, which just seems incredibly lazy. But it turns out that Mark Wahlberg and Mila Kunis' characters got a divorce, and he says it's because she was trying too hard to change him into something he was not. But based on the first film, she just wanted him to grow up and be more mature and responsible. She wasn't saying that he needed to stop being who he was. In fact, I thought she was surprisingly tolerant of his antics. But yeah, and the end of the movie, he does grow up. And not anymore. Now he's back to being the same old man-child that he was before. And now his new love interest is pretty much a woman-child who likes to do drugs just as much as he does and seem to come across as kind of irresponsible. And yet it's cool now that they have each other, and their chemistry just never really clicked with me, whereas with Mila Kunis and Mark Wahlberg, I did think they had a good chemistry. I enjoyed their comedic interactions, and I thought they were alike in the right ways and different in the right ways, to where there was an interesting contrast there. Whereas here they're just too much alike, and to me being too much alike is just as bad as being too different from each other. So I was just bored. I was bored, really badly bored. And that's all I'm going to really say about it. Would I recommend it? No. I mean, if you really like the first Ted, wait till it comes out on DVD. I would not go to the theaters to see this. I wish I did not go to the theaters to see this. And that's it. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter. I did not do a written review of this, but I did do a written review of Magnificent Warriors, which is like a Indiana Jones Kung Fu hybrid. My next one, which should be up later tonight, is Force of One with Chuck Norris. So read those. And I'm done. Bye.